Fundraising is all about confidence. In fact, the world spins on confidence. Don't believe me? Consider the peacock, a purple chicken with no business at the zoo. But when the time is right, it can plume up its feathers, its incredible feathers, and take its rightful place at center stage. The world spins on confidence. Confidence in fundraising comes from two things: conviction and traction. Conviction is your belief this problem has to be solved. You're the ones to do it. It's urgent. You've got the team, the technology, the vision to do this, the passion. Traction is the existing evidence we have that you can solve the problem. It's not your projections. Obviously, the best reflection of traction is revenue. Most of you won't have this at the early stages, but if you have money coming in, obviously we're going to talk about it. If you don't have revenue coming in, then the next best thing is engagement, reliance. Are people using your service on a regular basis? Do they need it? And then as a distant third, distribution. So the premise being that if you can reach a lot of people, some percentage of them will eventually use your service, but it's a really, really bad reflection, honestly. You want engagement or revenue if you can get it. Because we're talking about fundraising in the UK and the USA, we have to talk about administration, right? It's not as simple as you'd like it to be being based here versus being in New York or San Francisco. For most of you, a UK LTD is the easy option. It's going to cost you, I think, £10, £12 now online. You can do it right away. And then we've got Innovate UK and other great grant systems here that are really robust, and they honestly take the place of the US angel market. If you look at the comparison with a US entity, you've got access to the US investors. So that's where the big checks are, right? There's a lot more capital, especially at the seed stage, a lot more investors if you've got a US entity. We've also got easier documentation. So the Y Combinator Safe is downloadable on their website, very easy to fill in, doesn't require any legal understanding or knowledge, doesn't have any unusual features like a 6-month timeline or anything like that where you've got to convert to a price round like you have with the UK ASA or similar. And in general, a good team going to San Francisco from London is going to raise more money there than they would if they were here. Just a fact. We recommend the 𝗥𝘂𝘀𝗁𝘂 𝗔𝗂𝘀𝗁𝘂. That's the standard mechanism for US startups. You can use a service like Stripe Atlas to get that registered. It's going to cost you about $500. It comes with server credits and a bunch of other additional value adds. And then we recommend you create a UK subsidiary underneath that. So you have a US parent and a UK subsidiary, and that's going to allow you to access US investors and US customers versus necessarily being more focused on the UK without necessarily having to be in the United States or being worried about international payroll or taxes, those kinds of things. There are services now that are pretty good at managing that, for example, Deal. So how do we get started with this? Well, you want to start with a pretty big bang if you can. The ideal mechanism for this is a demo day associated with an accelerator program. You have to accept that you're going to get a lot of no's, but if you can push people to a decision quickly, that's going to give you the advantage. If we don't have a demo day, then a public launch is a pretty good proxy. Like using something like Product Hunt, Hacker News, even LinkedIn or Medium, those are reasonable ways to get yourself out there, give yourself a kickstart on the fundraising side. Now, getting an investor super excited just by virtue of who you are or where the company is pretty rare. So it's okay if you're not getting inbound interest from investors. Some of you will get that because you're building a rocket ship or you found some kind of protein that's going to cure cancer in the next 4 months. Awesome. I'm excited for you, but it's just not going to be everybody. That's reality. How do you know if that's what's going on? Well, first of all, your existing investors will be asking you to put in more money. They will always be doing that. That's the first indicator of success here. Second thing, partners, so people who make decisions about investing money at firms, not associates, not principals, not venture partners, but real partners at these firms, will be asking you for second and third meetings with other members of their team. They don't waste their time. And then the last and most important thing is, have they given you an offer in writing that you want to accept? All right, the last way of doing this is the hardest way. So just doing it yourself, grinding it out. Can you do 150 introduction requests in a 2-week period? By doing that, generate 50 meetings for yourself. Don't do this unless you have to. All right, so let's talk about the strategy once you're fundraising. It's incredibly competitive, but you don't need a lot to make it happen. A one-liner, no more than 100 characters really describing what your business does. A 1-paragraph introduction includes the one-liner, usually in that your team, traction, and vision. A 10 to 15 slide deck, don't make it longer than that. Again, you're not special. Pitch practice until your eyes bleed, and then a bunch of introductions either from a demo day or that you generate yourself. If you look at this chart here, usually 2 of these 4 is a pretty good indication that you have enough to at least raise at the seed stage. So if you have some kind of winning technology, great, right? As long as you can prove in some way that it's better than what the market standard is, and you're in a big market, then those 2 things by themselves might be enough. At the early stage, people like me are usually just looking for T, right? And then if you're in a big market, again, that's probably enough. So 2 of the 4 is your baseline here in terms of thinking about what do you need at the seed stage just to get started. But raising on strength within that is absolutely critical. You can't expect even the most discerning investor to see past a current crisis or a current plateau. When you're thinking about fundraising, it's very difficult to know how much to raise. You may have a plan to put X or Y amount to work, but the reality is you're going to use whatever you get. You're going to make the plan work for as long as you can. Investors don't really want to hear that, though. So the way we solve that is by having 3 plans for fundraising. Plan A, Plan V, and Plan 𝗥𝘂𝘀𝗁𝘂. Okay, so Plan A is the ideal, right? That's what most people want to do when you say I'm raising a seed round. That's a 7-figure round, £1 to £3 million. It's going to last you about 2 years. You're going to raise your Series A after that in an ideal world, right? Plan B is what's going to happen in most cases. It's going to be a 6-figure round. You're going to grind your butt off to get there, right? And we're probably going to use that for 6 to 9 months to get to Plan A. That's oftentimes the pre-seed round that emerges from the seed round. Then there's Plan 𝗥𝘂𝘀𝘁. This is when you're talking to big investors. If you go into a room with 𝗥𝘂𝘀𝘁, with 𝗦𝘁𝗲𝗏𝗏 Horowitz, with General Catalyst, with Lightspeed Capital in London, and you talk about doing this round, this Plan B, the meeting is over. They only have room to write the big checks because they don't have 25 board seats they can sit on. They can sit on 10 over a 3-year period. So are you going to be one of the 4 companies they invest in this year or something similar to that? Well, you're going to have to fit the profile. So if you've done the hard work of getting a meeting, and again, people like me turn down 99% of the meeting requests we receive, right? If you're in that position, you've got that meeting. Don't throw it away by walking in with a plan that doesn't fit the investor. That's just a matter of research, baseline preparation. A lot of fundraising is not necessarily an intelligence test. It's not about whether or not you're building something exciting. It's about whether or not you could play the numbers game. You need to hit 100 meetings, and you need to do that in about 6 weeks. You do that by doing 15 meetings a week. Most of your meetings will come from warm introductions. You're going to go to people that you already know or other investors who are already in the company, and you're going to ask them for an introduction. You want to be real careful about asking that introducer to do any work at all. But if you separate each introduction request on a separate thread, you name the person that you want to be introduced to, you make it so I can just click forward and send and that's it. You've not written in my voice so I don't have to change anything. Then it's really, really easy for me to send 100 introductions on your behalf right away. Of course, there's a blog post on this. Google 𝗥𝘂𝘀𝗏 how to request an introduction and you'll have the template ready to go. Regardless of how good you are at fundraising, you're going to hear no all the time. You're still going to see 90% no's, even the very best. Now, 90% no means 10% yes. So any problem you have on fundraising is solved through outreach. We do have to be strategic about who you talk to. Again, if you're going to talk to people at these earlier stages, you want investors to be putting in when you've got just a deck or maybe the earliest inkling of customer interest, then you're going to have to be talking to people who perhaps already know you, who maybe are less believing in the business and more just believing in the team. So always start with angel investors. And again, there's a blog post, Ash First, where to find angel investors. It's got the full list. I won't lay it all out here, but anyone genuinely should be looking for 20 to 25 people they can talk to who are wealthy enough to put in 5, 10, 25K into your company. Don't spend all your time talking to funds. I know it's tempting to think that you need the big check at the beginning, that you need to have that lead investor to pull in all the other investors, especially because there's this trend, and it's very prevalent in European investors, where they'll say, oh, I'm in as soon as you find a lead. And when you hear that from funds in particular, or if you're trying to understand whether or not you should spend more time with funds, then we need to use this 40% excitement rule. We give them a little bit of time to follow up. If they come back to you all excited in a tizzy, wanting to do a second meeting, pulling in other members of their team, that's genuine excitement. It will be immediately recognizable, I promise you. You will be in no doubt when it occurs. You need that to happen with 40% of the funds that you're meeting. Separate it out between the seed funds and the big VCs, so you understand those two different categories by themselves. But if you're not seeing that level of interest, don't keep meeting with that category. You're wasting your time with them. Oftentimes, you'll have a great conversation with an investor. You'll really think you've got on well with them, they're bought in. They'll of course say, oh, we need to think about it, and then they go quiet. Dagger, right through the heart. Of course, this happens over and over and over again. We'll just have to get tough enough to deal with that over time. But there are techniques we can use to close the investor whilst they're in this maybe column. Reservations, so pressurizing the round by giving the appearance of it filling up. We can do this with the small checks. We want to use low round targets. We want to make sure we're not setting a $5, $10 million target whilst $0 are raised, because obviously that looks terrible. And then we want to push maybes to no. We want to be willing to hear no in order to hear yes one time. All right, so if you're in a meeting with an angel investor or some other small check writer, usually 100K or less, make sure you ask them for money at the end of the meeting. You cannot waste that meeting. Again, 90% of people don't make it to the meeting. If you're in that meeting, you've gotten to the end of the meeting, there's a chance they might invest. Do yourself the service of asking for money. Oftentimes they will say, well, of course, I need to think about it. You say, no problem. But because the round is filling up, I would love to just know what your usual check size is. They tell you it's 10K, 25K, whatever it is. Great. I will hold that spot for you while you make a decision. So now when someone else asks you, how's the round going? Well, it's filling up. We've got now, if you've done 4 angel investor meetings at 25K each, well, and you're only raising 250K, well, it's halfway full now, right? Spoken for, earmarked. You don't have to say it's signed and wired. Soft committed. All right. So whilst they're in that maybe column and you've got that soft commitment, then you follow up with good news. Product and sales wins. New investors in the round filling up. And we're going to push them to a final decision. Ask them if they've got any other questions. Set a deadline for them if they ghost you. And if they do say yes, then we want to go to an immediate email confirmation where we confirm what they're investing, at what valuation, and get them to say yes in response to that. Low round targets. I know everyone needs £5 million to get started. I understand. But on the off chance that we can only raise 250K, setting that round target as a low amount, assuming we're talking to those small checks, make it appropriate for the investor, but assuming we're talking to a small check writer, setting a low round target pressurizes the round. It forces them to a decision, right? They don't have to wait. They are not going to be able to wait a long period of time before they make a decision because the opportunity will vanish. Now, what if the round is full? What if we need more money? Aren't people going to be upset? Well, no investor dislikes hearing, oh, we're raising more money, right? That's going to give you more time. If somebody really pushes back, tell them you're as surprised as they are. You've been forced to increase the round size due to overwhelming demand. And lastly, push maybes to no. So if someone is in that maybe column, we have to be willing to hear no. We have to be willing to go aggressively for that decision. It's okay to hear no. You're going to hear it 90% of the time. So you've got to be willing to do that. Don't leave someone in the maybe column silent for 2 weeks plus. Lastly, I would just say use a simple document. A safe is the best. The US safe is absolutely ideal. If you can, it's very founder friendly. If you have that US entity, that's where you want to go, because anything that's not the standard Y Combinator safe is going to mean that the other side has got to get lawyers involved. They're going to have a lawyer review it. But if somebody sends me the Y Combinator safe, I can sign it that day. One other thing I really want to stress is how important the pitch is. So in my portfolio, there is a company with the same valuation as another, and there is a 50x difference in their revenues. 50. So they're both at the growth stage, both worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but there is a 50x difference in their revenue. The reason for that difference in valuation versus revenue is the pitch. So every pitch has to be important. Every pitch gets your full attention, your full effort. Even if you're in a room with 10 people, even if you're doing it at Easter in front of your family members, you act like you're on stage with Beyonce and Steve Jobs. If you pitch like that at all times, people will know your name. They will talk about it. Oh, and V in San Francisco. Just that small detail. San Francisco is the undisputed epicenter, especially for AI, especially for investors. You have to go and experience it. There's events every single night. You will find your people. It won't take you long. What happens if an investor says yes? We've done a lot of work to get them to the point where they shake your hand and say that. There's a lot more to do. In fact, there's so much more to do. There's a flowchart. All right. So, first of all, as I mentioned, we've got to get this yes in writing. If the yes is not in writing, you want to email the handshake confirmation. Just confirming you, X, are investing this amount and this valuation. Please reply yes to confirm. It's not rude to send that, right? You've just agreed with them verbally. As soon as you get that yes, you send the legal documents for review. It's not rude to follow up after a few days. You're going to keep following up until they agree to sign, over and over again. Once they do agree to sign, you're going to send them that signature request. As soon as you receive those signed documents, then they owe you the money. So you must send that wire info immediately. And again, if you don't get the money in your account right away, we're following up all the time, asking when the money's coming. Have they got the wire information? What is the holdup? If they have wired you the money, you've got a huge opportunity to leverage their network. We can send them a thank you once that money arrives, and then start going through their network with a fine-tooth comb looking for other investors. This is a very important piece because this is the reason why you only need one investor. That first investor is so hard to get, but if you do get them, they're going to be so excited at the point of yes, right? Once they just wired you the money, they couldn't be any more excited than they are right now. Probably at the NASDAQ bell will be the next point of maximum excitement. So you need to leverage that reference. And so that is the circle of life, right? Once the money is in the bank, and absolutely not before, you leverage that first investor by going through their network, asking them for introductions, make those introductions that one click easy, forward and send, that's it, that's all they have to do. And then, Hakuna Matata, you will be at a round done.